Freedom we all would subscribe to. However, in the context of the new EU 48-hour working time directive, which imposes a regulation from outside this country on the way in which companies run their businesses, is not recognising the freedom that we would like to be able to engage in when we run our own businesses. So I'm saying when we have a job to get people into work, how does the 48-hour working time directive encourage that process?
That's a good question. I think the flexibility is important, and I think one of the things that we would like to see happening is actually more people coming in and working for some hours. At the moment, there's a lot of people who are precluded from working any hours at all because of the old-fashioned poverty trap, which still remains in this country quite extraordinarily. We have to get, and we have ways of, we feel, of reducing benefits, but enabling more people to get back into work and do some work. With reference to the EU and their manipulation or interference with our own affairs, you'd be surprised to hear that actually the Green Party is a bit reserved about the European Union. We think it's absurd, the idea that you're either in or out. We think we're absolutely part of Europe, but we would like to see significantly less interference in our own affairs. For example, we're against the euro. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Mark, would you like to take that one?
Thank you, Viv. Yes, John, your question. First of all, I think it's perfectly true. We would be much happier if quite a bit of employment and social control was actually returned back to the UK. We were opposed to this particular directive. And indeed, one of the things David Cameron's made very clear is that a Conservative government would actually aim to fight Britain's corner in Europe and aim to win some of those battles which the present administration hasn't even been willing to engage in. If you don't even fight the battles, you're not going to win any of them. You pick up a very important point about flexibility for companies. Companies do need to be able to be flexible about the way they run their operations. And I think it picks up on one of the points, the previous discussion we had, about how we generate jobs. The most impressive thing that I've found in this area is we have got some outstanding businesses, some of which probably most people aren't aware of, who actually compete across both Britain and the world in some very competitive sectors. And the fact is, none of us up here, even those of us that have had business careers, frankly can go create those jobs for people. We've got to get out of the way and let the smart, very capable people who live in this part of the world create and develop those businesses, grow them, and create jobs for everybody else. And that's really what I want to do to help and support businesses willing to do that.
Thank you very much. Tim, would you like to take that question?
Well, I'm very glad this question's been asked because I'm sure everyone on the panel will say, oh, we want small businesses and all the rest of it. And then we get 48-hour directive which says, obviously it's bad for small businesses. And then they say, well, we want to do something about this. We're going to try and control Brussels. So we're going to, look, the three so-called main parties, the three old failed parties, have broken a promise to the British people. They all promised that there was going to be a referendum on any major change to the European Constitution. There has been a very major change to the European Constitution. They have all broken that promise. And again, we get the Conservatives saying they're going to go back and review this, and we're going to have debate and discussion about the social charter and social legislation, which indeed the previous Conservative government did resist. Don't trust them. The only answer is to get out of the European Union.
Can Mark have the right to reply?
Just very quickly, Tim says that parties broke their promise. All three major parties at the last election promised a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty. We had a vote in Parliament. I did what I said I would to you at the last election. I voted for that referendum. The Labour and Liberal Democrat parties broke their promise and they voted against that referendum, which is why we didn't have one, and why the Lisbon Treaty became law. And because it became law, it is now too late to have that referendum. Thank you.
Right. Tim, have you finished your question?
I'll be quick. Mark is the great constituency MP, and I know it's been difficult for you, and I understand. Having said all that, your party has let the British people down.
Thank you very much, Tim. Chris, do you want to take that question now?
Obviously descends into a debate about whether we should be in or out of Europe. So let's be absolutely clear. The Liberal Democrats are in favour of our involvement in the European Union. And indeed, I would go further and say that there is no particular difficulty, in my view, from certain works for employees being protected by the European Union. I'm not entirely convinced that should be a problem. I don't have any particular difficulty in rights of employees being protected, and if it takes the European Union to do so, then so be it. That said, I take the view that our British government, of whichever party, should be taking a more proactive role in the European Union and fighting for the protection, effectively, of those rights that we hold dear. In terms of the 48-hour working time directive, I fully understand and respect how that might get in the way of some small businesses. I do, and I appreciate that. But in the main, those sorts of pieces of legislation assist employees and can present employers with opportunities. Indeed, sometimes can promote additional job growth.
Thank you very much, Chris. Bruce, would you like to answer that?
Yes, well, in this country we work longer hours than virtually any other industrialised nation. What this working time directive does is to protect employees from unreasonable demands from their employers to work unreasonable hours. Now, if you're talking about protecting and expanding employment, do you want fewer people in work working incredibly long hours to the detriment of their work-life balance, their family life, being unable to support their kids at home in doing their homework and so forth, because the employers are putting unreasonable working time expectations? Or do you want people to live a good life with a good work-life balance? I would go for the latter. And I have no problem with the 48-hour working time directive as part of a package of regulation that actually protects employees from unreasonable demands. There's nothing to stop somebody voluntarily working longer than 48 hours. As many people do.